now we're going to have the other producer of this madness call from the B.Q.E. to the Q.E.D. Now that could be the Bronx Queens experience or the Brooklyn Queens experience, whichever one you want. Al's a retired detective. He worked most of his life in the South Bronx, the 40 precinct, and now he's going to talk about Christmas Day in the South Bronx.
Good evening, everyone. Made it over here safely from Jersey. Before I tell you my story, I just want to acknowledge my mom and dad are here tonight. And I have a lot to thank them for. You know, getting older, you start to think about what it is that makes you what you are and the things you've done in life. And as I get older, I start to realize that a lot more. So I just want to say thanks, Mom and Dad, for coming over. And so I brought this poster, Paul Newman in Fort Apache, the Bronx. And I saw this movie when it came out. It was 2 years before I went on the police department. And I was scared shit. I come out of the movie theater shaking, and 2 years later I wind up patrolling the exact same streets, looking at the exact same buildings that were in this movie. You know, when I went on the cops in 1986, I had my eyes open when I went in. I realized the days of going, you know, to birthday parties and christenings and spending Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving with the family just wasn't going to happen. Chances are, you know, as a rookie, you're going to be working all those holidays. And fine, I mean, I was fine with that. On Easter, I knew my mom was making a roast leg of lamb and exactly what time it would be coming out, and there I'd be on a lonely foot post looking at the pigeons and the sewer caps. And, you know, missing that. But, okay, fine, you know, that was that. And the South Bronx, well, a lot of people think it was a tragic place, and it was in some ways. It's gotten better, but, you know, I learned that just because the people lived in a very, you know, area that looked like it had bombed out, that didn't mean that those were bad people. They were good people there. There was a lot of good people there. My own Irish relatives, when they came off the boat, they lived in the same tenements, I found out. It was unbelievable. And there I was back there. So, you know, when these holidays would happen, I was a bachelor in those days. Sometimes I'd allow myself to wallow in a little bit of self-pity, you know, wishing I was with family. But I usually got over that because after the shift, I'd go to one of the local Irish pubs. I lived in Astoria in those days, a few blocks, and I'd celebrate the holidays with the Irish bartender. That was my family for the night. And this one Christmas Eve, I'd say it was about 1987 or 88, I learned something that night, and that was that blessings can come disguised as a tragic loss. And the word honor is more than just a platitude. I was working in a radio car Christmas Eve with my partner Linda. It was about 9 o'clock. We got a call of an elderly woman having a cardiac. So we raced over there to the apartment building. Excuse me. One of those tenements, 4 or 5 story walk up. We raced up there and got to the apartment, and there was a very elderly woman, very frail, sitting in a chair. The family was there. Everybody was upset. And there wasn't a lot of English spoken, so I was fairly decent in Spanish. And they said she was having a heart attack. And I saw on the table, it was all full of prescription medications. And so we called for, you know, the ambulance and see how far the ambulance was out. And they said it didn't look good. They were on another call, so I said, okay, we'll make a command decision. We're going to take her right now. We're not going to sit here and watch her die while the ambulance might never get here. So I picked her up. She was very frail and elderly. She reminded me of my granny, my mother's mother, who was off the boat from Ireland. I picked her up and going down the steps, and I can remember my nightstick and my handcuffs rattling as we're going down. And you know, you got to understand, a cop carries probably 25 pounds worth of equipment on his belt and a bulletproof vest, but it felt like she was lighter than air. We were just racing down those steps, and we got into the car, and my partner Linda took the wheel, and I put her into the back seat. And some of the other units, they started closing down intersections. We radioed Central and said we're on our way to Lincoln Hospital. Make sure they're waiting for us. It's about a 5-7 minute ride. We're racing over there, and the whole time I'm with the woman in the back seat, and I can see she's upset. Tears are coming down her eyes. It's one of those moments you start to think of your own mortality, and you know, is this that serious that, you know, my life could be ending? And I'm holding on to her hand, and she's gripping my hand so tight. And I remember her saying in Spanish, Dios está conmigo. Dios está conmigo. God is with me. She knew what was happening. I could feel her breathing was getting more labored and shallow, and the palm of her hand was getting very sweaty, and she was getting weaker by the moment. We got to Lincoln Hospital. My partner gunned the radio car into the receiving bay. We lifted her out, put her on a gurney. I'm holding her hand the whole time. She's not letting go. Her grip is very, very strong. And I'm looking at her. As we're bringing her in, one of the doctors said, okay, officer, you can let go of her hand now. And I said, no, she's not letting go. She wants me here, and I want to be with her too. He said, okay, no problem. We bring her into the ER, and they're putting the heart monitors and IVs, and she's fading, and I can see on the monitor now she's flatlined. And then they said, officer, now you got to let go, because the only thing left for us to do is to try to give her some electric shocks. And that's what they did. Doctor said she's gone. I remember talking to the family in the waiting room, and through their grief, they said to me, officer, would you come to our apartment tomorrow on Christmas Day? We want to show you something. Nobody had ever said that to me before. Could I come to their home the next day? So I said, fine. So before my tour, I went to their apartment. I presented myself, and I had no idea what they wanted to show me or what to expect. They opened the door. We had exchanged hugs. And they brought out onto the table some glasses of Puerto Rican rum that they had warmed up. And they said, officer, would you share a toast with us to our mother? Her name was Milagros, which is miracle in Spanish. We made a toast, had the rum, and one of the daughters said, officer, I want to show you something. And from one of the bedrooms, she brought out an old black and white framed photograph. And it was of a man, maybe 30 years old, about the same age as I was at that time. He was dressed in a crisp police uniform with a brimmed cap and a big smile on his face. And she said, officer, this is our father. He was a policeman in Puerto Rico, where we were born. And we came to the Bronx in the 1970s. He's passed away now. And I said to myself, now it's all starting to make sense. The reason why Milagros had held my hand so tightly, right to the very end, because she knew that her husband, the policeman, would have done the exact same thing. And I said to myself, blessings came to me that day, disguised as a tragic loss. Because I say to myself, when my time comes, perhaps there'll be a policeman there to hold my hand when the end is near. And I'll know that I too have nothing to fear.